Nobody talks about the moment after they decide to change. It's not the motivation, it's not the decision, it's when nothing dramatic happens. You told yourself you were different now, but the silence feels like a lie and tells you something otherwise. This silence is exactly where I saw my clients struggle back when I was a personal trainer. I had a client, let's call her Annie. She was the absolute master of day one. She would join a program with so much fire and show up perfectly for a week or two. And then life would start to happen. You know, life. Social events, personal stress. On the outside, she had what looked like perfectly valid excuses to forfeit. But looking back, her new identity or resolution was being chipped away because she was being emotionally lazy. We can't solely blame Annie's failed attempt on her lack of willpower. The most critical problem Annie had was she hadn't yet done the lazy-proofing work of creating a system to hold her emotional state when her transformation journey got hard. She was relying on her mood to fuel her progress. Without a system, Annie's resolution was destined to fail. The truth is, not having a safety net for your feelings when your journey gets hard or boring is where most changes fail. In the last episode, we talked about the crying wolf effect. This is one of the high costs we pay when we've been in the same loop too many times, and when we've promised ourselves change but didn't have the system to back it up. If you have lost trust in your own words, I've linked the video down below. I hope you find it helpful. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Tiffany. In the previous episode, we talked about how people stop believing us because of our inconsistency. But there's another level that most people miss. You see, even if you manage to build up your new identity successfully, none of that matters if internally you cannot regulate yourself when things get hard or uncomfortable. Because identity doesn't fail in public at first. It fails in private when nobody's looking. It fails on one of those days when you can't find your motivation or forget the pain that made you start this resolution. And the worst part is, all these obstacles appear before your new behavior even has a chance to form its pattern. So let's go back to Annie. If we looked into her journey closely, her failed attempt never started from her behavior. It started internally, in her feelings and her emotions. Whenever she faced a setback or at a crossroads of priorities, she would immediately slip back to the old version of herself. So what looked like inconsistency was actually emotion and friction overload without containment. And every time her resolution ended up the same, it reinforced the idea of Annie's incapability to change. Sooner or later, this pattern became part of her identity. Consistency is not about discipline. Discipline is not what holds identity. Emotional regulation does. Discipline only works when your internal state is stable enough to execute it, and when we have a system to back us up. We are only left alone with our reactions and hunches. Picture this. It's like we finally light up a candle with a couple tries with our matches. But without the hurricane glass, the candle we tried so hard to light up would easily be blown out by a small breeze. So instead of screaming, stay disciplined, be motivated at the top of the lungs, we need something more reliable. Most people think the answer is more willpower, but I found a 3-step system that actually makes willpower unnecessary. Nothing fancy, I call this the emotional regulation system. So the first step is what I call the delay. Before you respond to any emotional spike, you delay interpretation. Not suppression, just delay. You don't decide what the emotion means immediately. You don't label it, you simply notice what is happening now made me feel uncomfortable. This creates a space between our feelings and the result of a resolution. In the next step, I call it the naming buffer. You label what's happening and how it's affecting you without commenting on your progress. So, not I'm failing, but this is making me feel uncomfortable. Not I'm slipping back to my old self, but this is uncertainty. I need more stability. The naming buffer creates this cushion when we're facing the intensity brought by our setbacks. There is no need to place blame or give up entirely. Our goal is to focus on our present and future instead of our past. And the last step, I call it the push. Decisions made emotionally are never good ones. Transformations are based on continuous actions, and reliable actions, mostly, depend on pre-made decisions. We do not negotiate those ifs or buts in real time. We do not put our new identity at risk. We execute what we already decided when we were stable and sane. Not perfection, not control, containment. Real identity change is learning about how to stay that person when what you have left is just you and your system. No validation, no momentum. Without that system, every change becomes temporary, and every restart becomes another entry in the crying wolf pattern. But when you learn to regulate your internal state and follow your plan, you stop restarting yourself and start sustaining the pattern you formed. In the next episode, we'll dive into how burnouts are connected to boundary failures and how it's costing you your influence. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!